Welcome to my workshop. Looking here at this cute little quarter-size violin bridge, it's only 3 centimeters across. I start by marking the bridge position on the top of the instrument. There is various equations you can use to work this out. Roughly it lines up with the nicks in the F holes on the top of the instrument. And then I will look down the fingerboard to align the bridge in the center so the strings sit in the center of the instrument, which is this mark here. The pencil I'm using there is well, I always called it a Chinograph, which was the brand that I used when I was learning. It's a white, almost crayon-like pencil. I'm using here my favorite knife to roughly cut down the bridge feet. I'll cut them down roughly to fit the shape of the top of the instrument. This is my Kogatana knife, which I've done a video on, that I'm using here. So just looking at it from various angles, front and back, to make sure that it's standing with the back of the bridge roughly at right angles to the top of the instrument. And then continue just making some adjustments. These bridge blanks come with fairly thick feet and a fair bit of room to adjust and to fit different shaped top plates. They take a little bit of work, both to get them to stand up straight. The more accurate you cut with your knife, also the less work it takes with sandpaper, which is the next step. So I'll then just slide a fine grit piece of sandpaper. I'm using here a 240 grit sandpaper. Sometimes I have used a 120 in the past, however I think the 240 is best. You want something as thin a sandpaper as you can get your hands on, and I'll just then rub the bridge backwards and forwards very slightly on the top, in line with where the marks that I've made for the bridge feet. You do want to put a reasonable amount of downwards pressure on the bridge. You also need to make sure that it's held upright. If you rock the bridge backwards and forwards, it sort of, it will mean that the feet they'll have an arch to them, and then that won't stand up straight. And that's what I'm looking at here, is just checking that it's standing square. The next step I'll use is I'll go to is using this carbon paper, which I'm actually finding hard to get these days, and that makes marks. As you slide the carbon paper underneath, that leaves a mark on the bridge where the feet are touching. And then I'll use a scalpel, like a medical scalpel, to scrape off where it's the marks that are left on the bottom of the bridge feet. And I use the scalpel for this and not my favourite knife, mainly because the scraping action blunts the blade quite quickly. So the scalpel has disposable blades, so it's just a convenience, and I'm used to doing it. And I'll just scrape those. It highlights the high points basically on the bottom of the bridge where it's touching. Scrape those away and align it with the marks again. A little rub on the paper, the graphite paper, and continue this process for some time. Sometimes it looks like it's getting worse before it gets better. I've just jumped ahead a little while here to, I think, show you the finished process, the finished result. And moving on here, I'm marking out the string height. There are, again, exact dimensions for the projection of the strings off the fingerboard. I have fit many thousands of bridges, and just with experience can judge the string height. And I'll then use I use an old bridge as a template, one of my old bridges as a template for the arch of the top of the instrument. You can get templates online which will give you the arch for different fractional sizes and full size instruments. Next up, I use a chisel to rough down the rough shape of the arch of the bridge. It's just the method that I was taught, and I love watching the little curls jump away from the chisel as it cuts down. It looks a bit dangerous and unwieldy, but I've been doing it this way for many years, and it's a method that I find I can cut the bridge down to my pencil mark quite accurately. Apologies for my hair flashing along and getting in the way here. There's a few times I think throughout, probably not just this video, but a few of mine where my hair will sort of get in the way. I'm not always actually aware of how far it sort of expands out from my head. So I've just flipped the bridge over. The point at which the curve meets its apex, the grain, if you approach it from the wrong direction, you can sometimes find it'll chop out a great chunk. So you need to, I find flipping the bridge up one way then the other helps. Next, I'll grab a file and I'll file the arch and the curve of the bridge top down to my pencil line and make any adjustments necessary. The adjustments I'm talking about there, sometimes you'll look at, when you look down the fingerboard of an instrument, if the fingerboard has an extra curve to it, you want to adjust your bridge curve to that curvature slightly. Some players may also prefer a little extra height on their bridge, or a bit more of a drop to the E string, or a little bit more height for the D on a violin. These sort of adjustments are taken into consideration at this point as well. And here I get my little ibex flat thumb plane, or as myself and my partner calls it, the bunny plane. It looks a little like a cute little bunny. And this bridge is very small. My fingers almost take it up completely, but I still like to work them down in the same manner as you would a full-size bridge, with the same care and attention to detail and fine tuning. The same tools are used when making a fractional size bridge, right down to a 1/8 or 1/10, which is even smaller than this, as I use on a full size instrument. This little thumb plane is a very versatile and great little tool I find for getting the arching of the bridge. The face of the bridge here, they're not flats. That there's an arch to both directions, both laterally and vertically on the bridge. This helps the harmonics from the strings transferred through the bridge shape to the feet, and then to the belly of the instrument and throughout. This arching, again, I do from it's a learnt skill from many years of bridge cutting, but also from observing and looking at the bridges of famous old makers. It's a very intuitive process, really, and it's about feeling the bridge, feeling what the instrument requires, and while you can go through and work from measurements maybe when you're learning. I think it's best to develop an intuitive sense of what feels right and what sounds best as well. And these sorts of things can only be developed from years of working with instruments. So after clearing off some of the little shavings, I'll give the face of the bridge a quick sand, actually on the same piece of sandpaper that I used to fit the bridge, the feet, sorry. It's a 240 grit, just to get a nice, even, soft finish to the face. Remove any grooves that the plane may have left, and here I am burnishing the face of the instrument, of the bridge, sorry. I'm using here the back of the handle of my favourite kogatana Japanese knife. I also have a scalpel handle, which works well for this. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using a knife with the blade in it. That does look a little dangerous, but I've been doing it for many years. And that just hardens the surface of the grains and gives them a nice shine and luster. I'll then use a fine 1200 grit piece of sandpaper just to rub over the top, take the sharp edges off before marking out the string grooves, going back to my previous bridge as a template, and just a little pencil mark for each of the string grooves. Again, just eyeing them off, or looking at them with using to make sure that that the spacing is correct, and then using my knife to cut basically little V cuts the width of the pencil mark. Aim to pretty much take the pencil off using a sharp pencil, depends on how sharp your pencil is, but as a rule of thumb, the width of the pencil is enough. And then I'll use a fine file. It'll be a little needle file that I'll use to smooth up these grooves. You'll see in a moment. So here it is, the little needle file, or mouse tail, as the other name for it, which I think is a bit cuter. And I'm both just broadening and shaping the grooves for each string, and also just taking off the front and back sharp edges of the string so that the string passes over the grooves smoothly. This prevents the bridge being pulled forwards when it's being tuned up. It also prevents the bridge buckling, or helps to prevent the bridge from buckling under the string pressure. These are the sorts of little details that a skilled luthier will go to and make up the difference in a really well-fitting and highly skilled job. Here I'm doing the little fine detailed decorative sort of individual decorative and personalised elements of the bridge cutting process. These are my own personal sort of decorations. I'd say please don't copy them. Find your own. Most luthiers and will have their own style. Some people will have maybe a sharper and less curvy style. Other people have a more curvy or different types of ways of doing these little embellishments. I like to take the corners off and make things a little more rounded and curved. I developed my own style from looking at other bridges from old makers, like A.E. Smith, an old Australian maker, W.E. Dolphin. Samson is another lesser known Australian maker, and I have samples of their bridges. And I looked at bridges that came through the workshop that I learnt at, the Violinary in Melbourne, and developed my own style, also based on the embellishments that Brenton Fifield, the owner of that shop, would do on his bridges. And I guess I started just copying different makers' work and adapting it to what I liked about what I was doing. These little cuts are very, very fine, and there's been many times in my early days where when doing these sorts of fine little trims, you'd break the little heart shape out of the centre of the bridge, or these are actually called the kidneys where I'm working here on a bridge. They're called the kidneys of the bridge, which is a bit of a funny name, but the little wings that go in there, they're very fine, and there's been many a time when I've been cutting these fine little cuts that I've actually broken them off and had to start the whole process again. Very early on in my career, the first few bridges I cut, or yeah, in my early days. Here I move to cutting the ankles of the bridge. They're little C-shaped spots on each side at sort of the top of the feet, where I would say maybe the heel of the foot, and then it forms a fine little wing here. I like to trim these down really as fine as I can get them to a really fine point, and it just creates a much finer look to the bridge overall. It's a much more elegant and refined look, and with the feet having a finer end point to them, both on the outside of or heel area of the feet, and also the internal area, which I'll thin down in a moment, which I would call the toe of the foot. The finer, if these come down nice and fine, I believe they actually assist in the sound transfer, especially on the upper registers of the strings and the finer harmonic nuances of the instrument, and the strings get transferred through the ends of the bridge feet to the top plate. And this is another reason for having the feet fitting the top really well. The vibrations from the strings are transferred through the whole foot, not just sort of a rough contact patch. So all of these elements of trimming the bridge both reduce and allow you to control the areas of higher density within the bridge, which areas of higher and density and lower density throughout the bridge will transfer different levels of vibrational spectrum and harmonic spectrum differently. So the heel and toe of the foot here being of a finer cut and thinner dimension will vibrate with the strings and harmonics and help transfer those through to the top plate evenly and in a balanced fashion. And I think it, in my experience, it really does make a difference to the way the sound that the instrument produces. This is the reason many luthiers will actually fit an overly thin bridge. Some makers like to really thin out, especially the centre area of their bridges, and it gives a really bright sound initially. But my experience is that, similar to thinning the top plate of an instrument, that this bright sound wears off really quickly, and then you'll find the bridge often buckles also and bends forwards under the pressure of the strings. So from a structural point of view, it doesn't make sense to me. Whereas something like thinning the feet out here has a very similar effect and is a longer lasting and utilises the overall design of the bridge without affecting its structural integrity. And these are the sorts of things that I guess I'm thinking through as I'm cutting and making my bridges. I'm really trying to do things in a thoughtful and practical way, as well as making them beautiful. And just evening out the arch between the feet. Most bridges will come with a set stamp, a sort of set shape to them, and I like to have, again for visual reasons, I like to have a slightly deeper arch between the feet, but also from the point of view of distributing the vibrations and harmonics from the strings through to the feet. A nice even curve in this area helps redirect those vibrations evenly to each foot. I'll then use the little mouse tail file again just to clean up any knife marks and make both sides of the bridge even. It's just another nice small finishing aspect that I like to attend to. I'll then move on to, I cut a small chamfer off the very side of the corner of each of the side wings of the bridge on both sides, and I take great pride in doing this with one smooth sweep of the knife, taking the cuts in one cut. I think it's the mark of a skilled craftsman to be able to take a nice even cut with one sweep. And that's the basic shape and cut of the bridge finished with its little adornments. I'll then light up the gas lamp and heat up my stamp that I use to stamp my brand on the front of each bridge. I use a brass heat stamp. Just snuff out the match in some water before throwing it in the bin. Don't want to burn the workshop down. These stamps come from a company called Stamp Yours in the United States. They're really well made, and I'll heat the brass stamp over the flame and testing it here on a scrap piece of maple. I want to test it in the same timber that I'm stamping into, so I just need to make sure I get it warm enough to burn my brand into the face of the maple without overdoing it or underdoing it. And my lovely camera person will just swing around, get a great shot here. I only get one shot at getting this stamp in the right place. You've got to drop it in place and hopefully you get it straight. And in this situation I did. That's my PB Shield stamp. I'm using here some washed linseed oil, which is not just linseed oil straight out of the bottle. It's had the fats washed out of it, which is a multi-process I go through, which maybe I'll detail in another video. It's also bleached in the sun. I do that process maybe once a year over the summertime. I'll bleach a fresh batch of linseed oil, and maybe I'll do another video on that process one day. I like to go through each point, rather than just sort of rubbing the oil on the face. I go through, having created a fine point on my rag, and carefully oil every surface of the bridge. This protects against moisture in the air. It helps prevent the bridge from buckling. The end grain areas of the bridge and any timber soak up moisture from the air really quickly. So having a protective barrier in the end grain and both on the face and back surface of the bridge, it also brings out the grain, makes it look nice, and helps prevent the rosin from sticking to the bridge as well. I don't put any oil on the bottom of the feet. You don't want any oil in that area. So there's the completed front face of the bridge, and here I'm just oiling up the back. That's really the only process that happens to the back. There's no planing or anything that goes on to that left square. And there's a completed little bridge on the face of the front of the violin.